Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: another ceasefire broken, more fighting in the Sudanese capital after the latest truce fails to take effect. We'll be reporting from Khartoum. Our other headlines: NATO defence chiefs pledge military support for Ukraine for as long as it takes at the summit in Germany. Also ahead,
we seek a healthy economic relationship with China, one that fosters growth and innovation in both countries.
US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen calls for constructive and fair economic ties with China, saying any effort to decouple the economies would be disastrous for both. And at harvest season, China's bamboo farmers hope to pave the way towards sustainable agriculture and economic growth. Gunfire and shelling have been heard across Sudan's capital just hours after a ceasefire was due to start. The three-day truce, called for by the United Nations, the United States and others, was due to coincide with the Muslim holiday of Eid, but fighting continues between the Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces. More than 400 people have been killed since this conflict began almost a week ago. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Naba Moeddin, in Khartoum. Naba, another failed ceasefire. What's going on?
Actually, the ceasefire has never happened, never. We just, once they announced it and the military has not confirmed it, it was just a proposal by RSF, then everything got escalated out of sudden, and the fighting morphed into streets fighting, not only in the presidential palace and the military headquarters and sensitive location, but also in neighborhoods. There is more than 12 neighborhoods and towns right now in Khartoum are on fire. While I'm talking to you, I can see bombings, I can see gunfire and smoke very close to where I stay right now. And also in the road that a lot of people, or thousands of families, took it trying to flee from Khartoum to Madani. Now it's fully trapped by RSF and the military, and the fighting is really very heavy on the road. A lot of people could not flee this morning. They want to use the alleged ceasefire trying to escape from Khartoum to Al Jazeera or safer places. But now the fighting is in Al Jazeera entrance, like Al Mas'oudia, Al Nuba village, and the whole road is trapped. Nobody can leave Khartoum right now. It's fully trapped and it's fully under fire hostage.
The irony of fighting on the first day of the Muslim holiday of Eid, which should, of course, be a happy time of gathering of friends and family.
Actually, yes, but it's not new for Sudanese people to witness such sad Eids. In 2019, there was a very sad Eid when the military and security forces cleared a sit-in where the protesters were surrounding the military headquarters and asking the generals to oust al-Bashir. Then the military and RSF and security forces, right now they are accusing each other, but all of the military and security services cleared the sit-in. And it was very sad memory, and every year in the anniversary of that sad memory, the Eid became, in Sudan, is a really sad occasion. But now it's very sad because the country could slide into a civil war. It's not only against citizens or protesters, but it's wider and could put the country at the brink of collapse. It's a real collapse happening unless it's contained very soon. And the international community needs to make bigger efforts and huge efforts to stop this chaos before it flared and morphed into a civil war. So yes, Eid should be a happy occasion. People are sad, frustrated, bail, cannot go out. Even the ones, people who want to go out, they go in smaller groups, pray in smaller mosques, and it's still risky, and a lot of people got killed and injured this morning. So yes, it's definitely a chaotic and sad situation in Sudan.
Naba, good to see you. Thank you for that. Our correspondent Naba Moeddin in Khartoum. Well, as well as in Khartoum, fierce battles have been taking place in Sudan's western Darfur region. The United Nations Refugee Agency says up to 20,000 people have fled into neighbouring Chad to escape the fighting. UNHCR teams on the border say most of the refugees are women and children. Well, Olga Saradomor is global spokesperson at the UNHCR.
Well, we expect that the situation is resolved soon, so we don't see any major refugee outflow. But the reality is that we are seeing already arrivals of refugees in some neighboring countries, notably in Chad, where our teams on the ground estimate that around 10,000 to 12,000 people from Sudan fleeing the fighting have arrived already at the border. These are estimations. Our teams are at the moment in the ground with the government of Chad, assessing and monitoring the situation, assessing the needs. These people are sleeping out in the open under the trees, and the main needs are for water, for food, for shelter. So our teams are there. We have not been able to visit all the provinces across the border, so this number indeed could be higher in the coming days.
So what are the main challenges that your teams on the ground are facing?
Well, the main challenge at the moment, for instance, in Chad, to respond to the new arrivals, is that Chad is already hosting 400,000 refugees as a country. And it's a country that, of course, has as well its need. So the services are already overstretched, and to that we are probably going to see the need to respond to this new outflow. At the moment, our operations, for instance, in Chad, they are quite underfunded. They are facing funding shortfalls. Only 15% of the needs have been covered. So in the coming days, we're going to be needing more resources to respond to the huge needs of the people that are arriving. And of course, in Sudan, as I was mentioning before, safety is crucial. The cessation of hostilities. Sudan was already a country in which a third of the population were in need of humanitarian assistance. So the fact that our teams cannot continue conducting the activities, the protection and monitoring activities that usually conduct, and providing the assistance and the relief that they do because of the insecurity at the moment, is having a strong impact in all those in need of humanitarian assistance inside Sudan.
Sudan itself is the host country to one of the largest refugee populations in Africa. So could what's happening there have a knock-on effect?
Yes, well, Sudan has been one of the countries, is one of the countries that is hosting one of the major refugee populations in Africa, mainly from South Sudan, but also we see refugees from Ethiopia, refugees from Syria. So this is people that already had to flee their homes in search of safety, and now they find themselves in the middle of another crisis and another conflict, and fearing from their lives. So indeed, in the coming days, we need to see what's the situation. Sudan is a country where there are huge humanitarian needs for the population. The fact that our teams cannot provide the assistance needed is having an impact on those refugees already in the country, but also we can see in the coming days some of these refugees being forced to move again, to leave their homes in search of safety.
One of China's top diplomats is beginning a 3-day visit to the Philippines. Foreign Minister Qin Gang will meet President Ferdinand Marcos, with regional security and trade ties expected to dominate the talks. It's his first visit to the country since taking up the role. His predecessor described the election of President Marcos last year as an opportunity for a new golden age of bilateral relations. The UK's Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, has resigned following an independent investigation into bullying complaints. Raab resigned in a letter to the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, before the report was made public. His departure is a setback for Sunak, just 2 weeks from local elections, where his Conservative Party is predicted to fare badly. The CEO of Fox Corporation has dropped a defamation case against Australian news site Crikey. Lachlan Murdoch, who is here on the left, launched a legal action over an opinion piece which accused him of complicity in the 2021 attack on the US Capitol. This comes just days after Fox News agreed to pay almost $800 million to settle another lawsuit which accused the media company of knowingly airing false claims about the 2020 presidential election results. The head of NATO says all allies have agreed that Ukraine should become a member of the alliance, but the focus right now is military assistance. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the alliance will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. NATO chiefs are meeting at Germany's Ramstein air base to discuss providing more air defense systems and ammunition for Kyiv. The summit comes a day after Jens Stoltenberg visited Kyiv, his first trip there since the invasion began. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Trent Murray, who's following developments from Berlin. Trent, we've heard opening remarks ahead of these talks. What else has been said?
Yeah, Jamie, this is really the chief format in which these discussions over more weapons for Ukraine are discussed at Ramstein Air Force Base, America's Air Force Base here. It's called the Ukraine Contact Group. More than 50 nations take part. And, of course, the top of the agenda today will be this question of whether to provide more weaponry to Ukraine. I expect we will see some more announcements. Certainly going into those talks today, we were hearing from the American side of things that they were looking to speed up the delivery of the Abrams tanks to Ukraine. Those are those American-made battle tanks. They are expected to arrive here in Germany in coming weeks to allow Ukrainian troops to do the training here at the Grafenwehr training site. Also on this question of European tanks, the main one that's being provided is the German-made Leopard 2 main battle tank. And we saw today an agreement between Germany, Ukraine and Poland for a specialist maintenance centre to be created in Polish territory, but very close to the Ukrainian border, essentially allowing the Ukrainians to bring those tanks, which have been handed over in recent months, back over to Poland to get all the maintenance that is needed. According to the German Defence Minister Boris Pistorius, who's been speaking in the past hour or so, air defence remains the #1 priority in terms of what Kyiv needs. That is why we are expecting some more announcements around ammunition for some of those air defence systems. But of course, we also know that high on Ukraine's wish list is the question of long-range missiles to try and strike behind Russian lines, and also the question of modern fighter jets. So far, Washington and Europe has hesitated on both of those requests, and it's not expected there will be a breakthrough on that question today.
Trent, what's the view across NATO member states about Ukraine's accession to the military alliance?
Well, this is, of course, off the back of those comments by Jens Stoltenberg that all NATO members were in agreement that Ukraine would become a member at some point. I'm not sure that that's necessarily been met in the affirmative by all member states. We heard again Boris Pistorius asked about this, the German defense minister, just an hour ago, and he sort of sidetracked the question by saying, first things first, we have to concentrate on supporting Ukraine now, and then suggesting that questions around accession would happen later. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban was a little bit more blunt about it. He retweeted those comments by Jens Stoltenberg just with one word, "What?" and a question mark. So clearly Budapest is not on board with this plan. I imagine it will be discussed today, but probably not top of the agenda.
Trent, thank you for that. Our correspondent Trent Murray in Berlin. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, we take you to one of the world's biggest book fairs, where paper books are more popular than e-readers. But what's the environmental impact on the planet?
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliette Mann.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
this week on Razor, trying out the Formula One racing simulator.
Putting in the inputs in the same way, through the same components, and then it's responding with actual motions.
And the worms that can degrade plastic.
So if we manage to arrive at a point where you can apply liters of this solution of enzymes to piles of plastic, maybe that will be the way to tackle plastic waste management.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Another ceasefire broken, more fighting in the Sudanese capital after the latest truce fails to take effect. Our other headlines: NATO defense chiefs pledge military support for Ukraine for as long as it takes at a summit in Germany. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the United States has no plans to decouple the American economy from China's, adding that it would be disastrous for both countries and the world. Yellen said Washington is seeking constructive and fair economic ties with Beijing. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, John Terrett, who's watching events for us in New York. John, the administration seems to be offering two different stories to China. I mean, perhaps you would explain Janet Yellen's remarks.
Well, let's start with Janet Yellen. She was speaking at Johns Hopkins University, which is a very, very famous university known throughout the world, mostly for health issues, actually, but they also have a school of international studies in Washington, D.C., and that's where she was speaking yesterday. And the background to this, as you know, is that there is only one issue that unites the Republicans and the Democrats in Washington, D.C. at the moment, and that is anti-China remarks and comments. So Yellen stands up and speaks, and to be honest with you, she was much more conciliatory than we have been used to from politicians in Washington in the last couple of years. It was, if you like, a sort of verbal olive branch to Washington, D.C., from Washington to Beijing. And she said that she wishes to visit Beijing as soon as the time is appropriate. Now, she is the Treasury Secretary of the United States, so of course she put the U.S. economy and U.S. interests first. But what was different was she also acknowledged China rising, the things that China is trying to achieve. And she went on to say that the most important thing is to rebuild the damaged economic relationship between D.C. and Beijing. She said that decoupling would be a disaster. Now, decoupling is a notion that is gaining ground around the world in think tanks in Beijing and in D.C. And it's the notion of the two biggest economies in the world actually not trading together at all, or trading in a very, very limited fashion. That would be a disaster, she said. But she did say that security trumps everything else. Everything comes back to security. And here she was referring to TikTok, which, as you know, the Americans are very concerned about how much Beijing can see of their data. TikTok is owned by ByteDance, based in Beijing, and the CHIP Act, where they're trying to promote American companies to build American microchips for use in America. But to be fair, President Xi said pretty much the same thing when he spoke a couple of weeks ago at the two sessions. So it's all part of the push-me, pull-you relationship going on between D.C. and Beijing at the moment. But I tell you, everybody understands one thing, and that is that there is no more important international diplomatic relationship for the two sides than the one between them, between the two biggest economies in the world. Nothing trumps that, really.
John, yet at the same time, President Biden's administration asking the G7 to restrict China trade.
Yes, well, so it is reported, and here we come back to this push-me, pull-you relationship. Let me try to explain this a little bit. First of all, I think you might be interested to know it's being widely reported here now that Biden will announce his re-election on Tuesday next week, and big donors are being invited to the White House on Wednesday and Thursday to try and make that happen. So that's the news point in North America today. The remarks about the G7 follow a phone call with Macron, when he visited China recently, said that Europe must not follow America when it comes to Taiwan. Biden very upset about this, the two sides issuing different communiques after their comments. But the report is that Biden will go to the G7 in mid-May in the Japanese city of Hiroshima and call for support on restricting China trade on things like microchips, artificial intelligence, and what they call quantum investments. Now, that is investment in things like technology and also the blockchain. Once again, though, it's being made clear that the US has no interest in tanking the Chinese economy, and we can go back to Yellen's speech for that. She said yesterday the US is not out to gain an advantage or stifle China's economic and technical modernization. Well, I think you could argue it does want to gain an advantage, but the second bit does seem to be true. And they say the same thing with Russia. You know, they're very, very hard on Russia because of the special operation in Ukraine, but there is still trade with Russia, ore, clothing, technology, that sort of thing. There's no interest in the world of really totally tanking the Russian economy, and the same is true with China. Now, the only remarks I've been able to find from China so far regarding all of this is the foreign ministry saying that no country has the right to interfere with Beijing's relationship with Russia. It's a story that's going to rumble on, but I think that speech by Yellen slightly changes things a little bit.
John, good to see you. Thanks for that. Our correspondent John Terrett in New York. The German car maker BMW has apologized after a promotional ice cream giveaway at the Shanghai car show caused a meltdown. The makers of Mini were accused of discriminating against Chinese visitors to its stand by only handing out the freebies to Westerners. BMW Mini became the second most searched topic on China's Weibo social media platform with over 93 million views. BMW says this incident was caused by poor internal management. The last livestock from New Zealand has been shipped as the country's export ban has come into effect. The government called for an end to shipping animals offshore due to welfare concerns. This came after a ship bound for China capsized in 2020, killing nearly 6,000 cattle and most crew members. The ban has been welcomed by animal rights activists, but the opposition argues it will significantly reduce New Zealand's GDP. Police in Canada are investigating the theft of an air cargo container carrying nearly $15 million in gold and other valuables. It was stolen from Toronto International Airport. Officials have not said which airline shipped the cargo or where the load had come from and its intended destination. Authors, publishers and other industry figures are gathering in London for one of the world's top book fairs. Artificial intelligence and its role in the future of writing is one of the subjects under discussion. But there are also discussions about how to make the industry more environmentally friendly. Our correspondent Li Jianhua reports.
Heaven for book lovers, this is one of the world's largest book fairs. Yet for environmentalists, there is concern about the impact of the publishing industry on the planet. Despite years of efforts to promote e-books, physical books are still more popular by around 3 to 1.
E-books for the reading experience, hardback for the physical books for the kind of, the experience of having a book.
It's tough, but I'd have to say physical books. I think there's just something about that, the quality of the paper and flicking through. I think it's something nice.
I do have hundreds of ebooks, so I do use it, especially when I'm traveling. Like traveling here to London, it's better than having 10 books in my bag, but I still have about 2-3 books with me every time physically, and I just can't help it.
But whether novels or non-fiction, physical books require trees, water and transport.
The processes involved in manufacturing the books that carry words and images are just resource hungry. So every year it's estimated nearly 4 million book titles are being printed if we include those self-published authors, which means every minute 8 books like this are being printed.
World-renowned publisher Pan Macmillan Group has been working to reduce its carbon footprint since 2017, with efforts including paper recycling, but warns that has its limit.
You need virgin fiber paper coming into the ecosystem so that you can then get recycled paper, and as paper is recycled again and again, I think 5 or 7 times is how long the fibers can last. It'll move through a life cycle and be useful for different kinds of products.
Some in the publishing world would like to see more local printing and distribution methods to cut down on transport.
Can we not kind of print everything in one country and then ship it around the world? Is it possible to print locally, for instance, distributed printing models? And also we have a tradition of book returns. So publishers send lots of books to bookstores and they are there and then they are shipped back. That of course is a very inefficient system and puts quite a burden on the environment.
Tech giant Google estimates that there are nearly 130 million published books in the world at the beginning of the year, with book sales thriving during the pandemic. It means the pressure is on the publishing world to develop more sustainable practices, even as they want to keep readers turning the page. Li Jianhua, CGTN, London.
It's harvest season in China's Lu'an County, known for its lush green bamboo fields. The industry is hoping to pave the way towards sustainable agriculture and economic growth. Our correspondent Dai Kai reports.
Nestled deep in the forests of Lu'an County in Jiangxi Province lies a hidden gem, bamboo shoots. It's a plant that stands above the rest in terms of how quickly it grows. He Xiaorong has spent the past 20 years working in the lush forests that cover this part of the province.
Usually I go up the mountain to pick bamboo shoots at around 6 in the morning every day. Often my family members will also come with me to pick them.
For generations, his family has relied on harvesting bamboo shoots for a living. April is the time of year he looks forward to most.
Picking bamboo shoots gives us more income. It happens once a year and there are two types of years, big and small. During a big year, one can earn around 50 to 60,000 yuan.
Just last year, the county's total output value of bamboo shoots exceeded 2 billion yuan, or about $290 million. The species have been transforming the lives of thousands of farmers here.
In recent years, thanks to bamboo shoots, more than 30,000 households in the county saw their income increase by over 10,000 yuan, or $1,500 each year. And it doesn't stop there. There are now over 10 specialized processing and production companies operating here.
As a local bamboo shoot processing company, we have been working closely with farmers and building a comprehensive supply chain system from production to sales. With the development of this industrialized system, our Lu'an bamboo shoot products are now popular nationwide and exported to more than 20 countries and regions, such as Europe, America, and Southeast Asia.
Local officials believe the success of the industry comes not just from growing and harvesting the shoots.
The Lu'an bamboo shoots have now been recognized as a product under the China-EU Agreement on Geographical Indications, as well as a National Agriculture Geographical Indication brand, with a brand value of up to 1.29 billion yuan.
The county and its people are reaping the rewards of this green initiative. The county government is providing subsidies and support, organizing various cultural festivals every year, as well as expanding sales channels both online and offline.
The bamboo shoot industry here in Lu'an County is an excellent example of how agriculture can be sustainable, innovative, and profitable. With its quality becoming increasingly recognized both domestically and overseas, this industry looks set for a bright future. Dai Kai, CGTN, in Lu'an County, Jiangxi Province.
The headlines again, another ceasefire broken, more fighting in the Sudanese capital after the latest truce fails to take effect. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.